want to start by saying that this isn't the first bad experience I've had dog sitting, but it's definitely the worst. So I started dog sitting back when I was 13 and made good money doing it. I'm currently 19 and this happened when I was 18. I set up an easy way for people to contact me about dog sitting. I put a post on Facebook and Instagram about it often and would get people in the messages asking me to dog sit. I got a notification from Instagram one day saying that someone was trying to message me. I accepted it and the message said something like, "Me and my wife are looking to find a dog sitter while we go away for a week to Florida. You'll have to work the 4th to the 11th this month. We'll pay you $300 for the week and you're welcome to stay at our house or go back to your own home." I started talking back and forth with this man, and we're going to call him Mr. Brown for the sake of privacy, so I agreed to take the gig and told him that I would stay in his house for the week. Once I got to his house, I was introduced to his 2 dogs, Mina and Letty. Mina was a little Yorkie and Letty was a blue hound. I was shown around his house, which was surrounded by 76 acres. I live in a farm town and live on 32 acres myself, so staying here didn't really freak me out. The closest neighbors were pretty far away, and you would actually have to drive there if you wanted to talk to them. They told me the rules and when to feed them, blah blah blah. Then Mrs. Brown told me about the nearest neighbor. In her words, she was a nice person, just a little drugged up and confused. She mentioned how sometimes she would pull into their driveway instead of hers and would end up mistaking Mrs. Brown for her dead daughter. Hearing this made me feel pretty bad for her, and I know all too well how hard it is for parents to lose their child because of how my parents were after losing my brother in a car accident. Mrs. Brown said that she shouldn't do anything bad though, and if she came up to the house, just point her back home and she should leave with no problems. After they left, I was down to watch movies and just chill with the dogs. The first 2 days were fine with no hiccups. The 3rd day, however, the old woman, who I'll call Miss Rose, did pull into the driveway. I came outside as she was getting out of the car. She looked up to see me and immediately got back in her car and left. I chalked it up to her realizing it was the wrong house when she saw me and went back inside. Later that night, though, I got a call from Mrs. Brown asking if I was okay. I said yes and asked why. She then went on to tell me about how she got a call from Miss Rose and that she said that there was a robber at their house. I explained that what happened, and she just laughed and said that she must have been confused and forgot that they were out of town. I ended the phone call, making a note to go over there tomorrow to clear the air about me being a robber. Once I went to bed that night, though, things got crazy. I woke up at around 2, hearing a light scratching sound that almost sounded like ticking coming from outside the window. At first I thought it might have been a bird or some sort of little creature and left it alone. But as the noise kept me from falling back asleep, I wanted to scare it away, so I got up and went to open the blinds, but screamed when I lifted the blinds at the sight of Miss Rose trying to pry open the window with a pair of pliers. Once she saw me, though, she started banging on the window with the pliers. The dog started barking now, and I quickly got up, told the dogs to follow me, grabbed my phone, and ran to a room with no windows, which was the bathroom, locking the door in case she got in. I called 911 and explained the situation, quickly giving them the address of what I could remember. She said that police would be there in 10 minutes, which for the area was pretty good considering their house is pretty rural. I had gotten the dogs to be quiet and put them in the closet connected to the bathroom to make sure she didn't hear them. I was trying to stay calm and could still hear the pounding on the window. As I continued to talk to the operator, I then heard glass shatter. I cursed under my breath, trying not to cry. I was really scared and pretty much ready to cry from the fear of being beaten to death by someone who was clearly not in the right state of mind. I was whispering what was happening to the operator hiding in the back of the bathroom in the tub. After about 4 minutes of pretty much silence, I heard footsteps, and I could see feet under the other side of the door, and I cursed to myself again. I then see Miss Rose get on her hands, looking under the crack, and I mistakenly let out a gasp. She gets up quickly, pounding at the door, and I can tell that she's still using the pliers, and I am at this point crying, asking the operator where the police are, to which she responds 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes felt like forever as I screamed at Miss Rose to please go away, and she screamed back that I shouldn't be here. Once I heard the sound of police cars, and about a minute later, them trying to kick the door down. Then I felt a little bit better. I was told to stay on the line till the intruder was caught and that police were now trying to get into the house. Eventually they did get in, and I yelled to get their attention, not that they needed it, and she was still banging on the door. Once they got into the room, she was told to drop her weapon, and she obeyed, saying that she didn't do anything wrong. They got her in cuffs, and a police officer told me it was okay to unlock the door, which I slowly got up and did so. After being taken to the police station and giving them the full story for their report, I went to my parents' house as I was just too scared to be alone. The next day I called Mrs. Brown and explained the situation. I got full payment even after telling them that I wasn't going back to the house. They called me a few days later saying that Miss Rose was under the influence of drugs, and in her words, she told the police that she decided to take care of the robber, me, herself, and that she did nothing wrong. She was charged with breaking and entering, which is kind of ironic. And after that, I quit dog sitting, and I'm a lot more paranoid and always make sure my doors and windows are locked. I live in a major U.S. city. I made the move here during the pandemic, and as there wasn't much going on, I made the habit of having some beers and food at the local lakeside park near me. You see and meet all sorts of different types of people. At the beginning of this year, on a day that wasn't too wet or cold, I made my way down to the lake, brought a sandwich, a couple of beers, and was listening to a true crime podcast. I found a little group of trees, pretty dry and pretty out of the way. I was hard to spot. So when I noticed this man walking toward me, I knew that he was going to ask for a cigarette. Even from a distance, he seemed weird, so I thought, I'll give this idiot a cigarette so he doesn't get all aggro about it and let him be on his way. And sure enough, this MFer offers me some Doritos from a bag opened sideways in exchange for a cigarette. I say no to the chips, but tell him that he can just have one. Just get him to go away and be done with it. He proceeds to introduce himself, and we launch into a meandering conversation. He's weird, and I can't shake the feeling that this dude is just off, but the conversation itself is pretty normal. I don't want to make this guy mad or anything when there's not a lot of people around, and about 2 hours later, after talking about all sorts of stuff, I finally excuse myself and leave. Less than a week later, I'm having a post-work beer at a bar, not too wet to go to the lake, when I hear a voice. I look up, and I kid you not, there he is. I tell myself, oh God, if this dude tries to corner me again to talk, I'm going straight to the bartender to get him off my back. I'm here to chill, not chat. It doesn't get to that as he whines about the TV, the music, the price, to the point that the bartender kicks him out before he notices me. When he did get angry, he got really aggressive and was ready to fight. I just knew that he was that kind of guy. A few weeks later, the bartender tells me a story. He had run into an old-time regular who seemed frazzled. He explained that while walking into the park, he saw some guy who recognized him. Hey, you're so-and-so, the regular from the bar back in the day. The regular denied it and said that he didn't know what this guy was talking about. Why? Because turns out, 30 years ago, this idiot abducted a woman, kept her alive long enough to make sure that she told him the right info to make ATM withdrawals with her bank card, killed her, and dumped her body. He got caught because he was driving her car around with her blood all over the back seat, making maximum daily withdrawals from the same ATM every day. When he got caught, he bragged about how they'd never find the body, and they never have. The bartender and I were able to corroborate this because we found some articles online about the murder, mugshot and all, and the dude looked 30 years younger, sure, but it was definitely him. About 3 years ago, I was 38 weeks pregnant. My husband and I lived in what we called our village, It was two dead-end streets off of a highway with forests beyond the ends of the roads and a small local store at the corner of one street. We called it the village because our trailer park neighbors were my aunt, uncle, and cousin's trailer, and then my husband's brother and nieces. Then my grandma's house was on the next street over. My other aunt, uncle, and cousins lived with her at the time, and my husband and I were 21 then. My best friend Ray was visiting from college and had spent the night with me. The next day, we decided to walk up my street, down the highway past the store, then down my grandma's street and back through the woods to my house. This was to try to get labor started as my pregnant belly was huge and my back hurt often. We were talking while I hobbled with her down the highway when a white truck rode by rather slowly. I knew the speed limit was 55 and this dude had to be going like 30 miles per hour. Through the driver window, I saw a bald white man, maybe in his 50s, rubbernecking at us. At this time, it looked like there might have been someone else in the passenger seat. The truck was kind of old, but I didn't know the year, make, model, or see the plate. Ray was talking and unbothered until I said, "Hey, that guy just went by really slow. I don't think that was anyone I know." She replied with something like, "Oh, I didn't even notice that." We were halfway to the store less than 2 minutes later when we saw him coming back from the other direction, and I said, "That's him again. Get in the grass." Since we were on what would have been his right side, we went down the slope of grass off the road. We're still in front of people's houses because the section of highway is lined with residences between the dead-end streets. He passes us slowly again, and when I turn to look behind us, he is slowing down even more, finds a spot, and starts to turn the truck around. I told Ray to run, so we ran. I was doing the best that I could, being super pregnant. We thought about going to the store, but decided to head for my grandma's up the other street instead. Her house was up the hill at the end, but it wasn't a long run. When we got up the hill, I looked back again to see that his truck was pulling into the store parking lot. We continued to run, got to my grandma's where she and my aunt were sitting at the table and told them what had just happened. My aunt made a police report. I was afraid to at first, thinking that maybe I was being paranoid. What if it was someone I knew and they were just trying to say hi, and maybe it was just some huge waste of the police time. Turns out that there have been other reports of a man creeping around the neighborhoods. Someone in another trailer park down the highway reported that her kids were outside playing when a man emerged from the woods trying to lure one of them to him. They hollered for their mom, and supposedly she came out and threatened him, so he ran off. It continues. A few more times we think that we see his truck, but are not sure if it's him, since one of the residents also has a white truck. My family had yet to see the truck, so they couldn't identify it. At some point when I wasn't home, a few of my cousins were playing outside. Their ages ranged from 10 to 15. This time the truck came rolling down our little street past them, and he turned around at the end, came back up, and stopped next to them. They said that he was trying to lure my 11-year-old cousin to the truck, but he said no, and they all ran back to my aunt's house. We had talked with the children about what was going on in the neighborhood lately. One more thing happened before the report stopped, though. I had my baby at 40 weeks. My husband, his friend, the baby, and I were home. Baby was about a week old, and we got a call from my aunt at Grandma's house that they had seen the man real close and personal. My two female teen cousins were in their room. It was getting dark out, but for some reason my cousin went to open the blinds to the window, and there was the man, squatting on the AC unit, staring at them. They screamed, and he jumped off and ran into the woods behind the house. My aunt called the police. My husband and his friend later went out with guns and flashlights to search for him, but didn't find him. I believe that he was parking his truck somewhere and then stalking houses from the forest. My husband and I actually used to walk through those woods and never had any issues, as it was private land that we had permission to walk on. It also seems that this man did not have a preference for age or gender. He was looking for anyone he could get for whatever sick reason. There had been police sent to patrol the highway or sit on the side of the road waiting, keeping an eye out for him throughout those weeks, but they never caught him. And I still wonder sometimes if he was someone from out of town, and hope maybe somewhere he gets busted before something truly bad happens. But we might never know. I'm a woman in my 30s, caring for my elderly parents, so staying in a downstairs room in my childhood home at the moment. The window faces the main street, which is an average residential street in a fairly quiet area. The bed faces the window. I often leave the window open at night since I need it to be cool to sleep, and I haven't really worried about it since there's a cabinet with an aquarium in front of the window area, not blocking the window from view, and I can reach to open it and close it, but it would make it difficult for someone to climb in. My dog, Sable, also always sleeps in the room with me. While she's sweet-natured, medium-sized dog who doesn't look the least bit threatening, she's a fantastic guard dog in that she's always alert to any noises and will stand her ground and bark and growl if she senses a threat, so I've never really worried about the open window. After tonight, I won't be able to do it again. It started at maybe 3:30 to 4 a.m. sometime. I was awake, since I care for my parents, and I often have disrupted sleep patterns and I'm awake at odd hours. I was reading a book and heard Sable growl, really low and really deep. Then, she jumped off the bed and began pacing a bit, looking up at the window before jumping up at the cabinet by the window, barking. I shouted, "Hey, we're calling the police. Dog will bite," just in case there was someone there, and went to look out the curtains to the side. I didn't see anything. I pulled the curtains closed and made sure to pull the right curtain over, and then drew the left side curtain, the one that covers the open part of the window, all the way over, covering the right side curtain too, tucking it down so any wind wouldn't be able to move it. I wasn't really alarmed then. It's a fairly quiet residential street, but there are foxes around that we sometimes hear, and occasionally someone passing by or the neighbor's gate next door will make Sable growl or bark. But she doesn't usually react the way she did this time. She'll usually growl, but stay on the bed, and her reaction was much stronger than normal, and I thought that even if it was someone scoping out the open window to potentially burgle, they'd seen now that the room was occupied by a person and a dog, and would go find an easier target. But mainly I guess that it was just a random noise that she'd heard outside. I was wrong. It was a good half hour or more after I'd relaxed and thought that I might doze off soon that I heard her growl again, a really serious, deep and low growl, and I listened, again thinking that it might be foxes or something. But I heard what sounded like deep, horror movie breathing noises, like the heavy breathing sounds that a pervert makes down the phone to his stalking victim in a film. I sat up, looked up at the window, and my heart stopped. The curtain had been pulled back and lifted at the bottom like someone was peeking under it, and I could still hear the heavy breathing, so I shouted, "Hey," again, and moved from the bed to the side of the window so I could see past the curtain, and saw the figure of a man moving away from the window to the right, towards the front door and the exit of the front garden. Too dark to make out features or clothing, it was just a dark male figure. Shaking, I immediately thought that since I knew he'd move away and wasn't at or under the window, I reached and pulled it shut, grabbed my phone, and called the emergency services. One thing that creeps me out in hindsight is that it would have taken a few seconds for me to move from the bed to the side of the window, and that was after I'd shouted and he knew that he'd been seen. But he must have stayed there even knowing that I'd seen him until I moved the curtain and could see out, then he moved away. The heavy breathing also had to be deliberate. It was so loud, like someone was trying to frighten me. While on the phone with police, I went around the ground floor in the house turning lights on, making sure the rest of the house was still secure, and it was. Very careful to lock doors and all the other windows at night, and everything looked undisturbed. 2 patrol officers came shortly before 5 a.m. and took the report. They suggested asking the neighbors if they have camera footage and to let them know of a potential prowler in the area tomorrow, and they went to drive around the area saying that they'd be wanting to know what someone was doing wandering around at 5 a.m., the time the police arrived anyway. Since the dark meant that I only saw the shape of a person, no real description, I doubt they can do much. I couldn't even be 100% certain that it was a man, but the breathing and the figure that I saw instantly made me think male. The outline of his head looked smooth, so either bald or wearing a tight cap, and height would have been average, 5'8" to 5'10". I'm still shaken, but feeling angry and violated and wishing that we had camera systems now, and I'll be looking into that. I never thought anything like that would happen. I don't have any enemies, no recent exes, no one I know of harboring any grudges. Since I'm caring for my folks full time now, I'm not out socializing or making any enemies, nor are my elderly and disabled parents. I'm at the wrong side of 35 and living in jeans or joggers and t-shirts, no makeup or fussing with hair most of the time, so not a likely target for a peeping Tom pervert. If it wasn't for the fact that it was my dog who alerted me to something both times, I'd wondered whether I was half asleep and dreamed it, that I'd imagined it. I've had hallucinations once as the result of a bad reaction to an antidepressant, but that was more than a decade ago. Hasn't happened before or since, and I learned how to test my reality in times that I was worried about whether something really happened or not from a psychologist. And when I asked how I could ever trust my own senses again after that reaction to the meds, they said that to be sure something was real, to see if other people can see or hear the thing too, or if it's a noise or voice outside, can I see someone or something that explains the noise? If so, it's not likely to be a hallucination if both oral and visual perceptions match up. The dog sensed that someone was there first, and I heard and then saw someone. I wasn't dreaming or imagining it. I don't use drugs and almost never drink, and am scientifically minded and don't believe in ghosts, and while I love a good horror film, I'm rarely freaked out by them anymore. I'm just too old and too cynical. A few weeks ago, I was watching the news, and one of the stories reported that a teacher from a prominent private school had just been convicted on multiple accounts of child abuse, and the victims included his children as well as students. The report of his arrest and allegations had been suppressed until the trial was over, however, was now being made public. The reporter also referenced that the defense lawyers argued for a reduced sentence on the basis that the teacher had also been abused by his father when he was a child. When the name and photo of the teacher was shown, I almost choked. It was Cameron, who was one of my best friends from primary school. I couldn't believe it. In primary school, I was best friends with two other boys, Cameron and Wilson. We finished primary school in 1995, and whilst they were both sent to the same high school, I was sent to a different school, and we therefore lost touch after that. We would often sleep over at each other's houses, either the three of us or just two of us, and I started to recall memories I had hitherto completely forgotten, also involving Cameron's father. I really don't remember things clearly, but I remembered different incidents at various sleepover nights at Cameron's house. Cameron and I would be changing into our PJs before bed, and his father would come in and talk to us. I know it sounds warped, but I still remember thinking that he was doing this because he was treating us like grown-ups. I think this might have been because my family were extremely prudish with all of that, and I must have felt that this was kind of an adult thing, and he was therefore treating us like grown-ups by having a normal conversation while we did that. Now, I know it sounds foolish, but I was around 9 or 10 when this happened and just completely innocent. And remember, this was the mid-90s, and whilst we knew about stranger danger, we didn't consider parents to be strangers, and no one ever talked about abuse. I also remember times when Cameron and I would be taking a shower, one after the other, and he came into the bathroom to talk to us. I also clearly remember that I saw his father actually nude once, and he entered the shower as I was leaving it. This is probably the clearest memory because it was the first time that I had seen a grown-up without any clothing on, and that his nakedness was fully visible, and he was just standing close to me. Only now as an adult, thinking back to the experience, did I realize that he was putting himself quite deliberately on display. I just remember him sort of standing there openly before he entered the shower. I did have a vague memory that he asked Cameron and I to go downstairs and that Cameron's mother and sister were entering the door downstairs, but as I said, none of these memories were very clear. I hadn't thought about any of this for years, and it dawned on me how innocent I was, and that I didn't realize that his behavior was totally inappropriate. I'm not saying that families who are more liberal with all of that kind of stuff are doing anything wrong, but knowing now that Cameron's lawyer said that he was abused by his father, I started to feel sick and overwhelmed by anxiety as I tried to work out whether those experiences were linked, and if there were any more experiences that I perhaps couldn't recall. I really wanted to reach out to Wilson to see if he would be willing to discuss it. I hadn't spoken to him since we were 12, more than 25 years ago, but I fortunately found his profile on Facebook. I messaged him to let him know who I was and name the school and year that we finished. Hey, this is Ryan, and we were best friends in primary school. I'm not sure if you saw this link, but our other friend Cameron was just convicted of child abuse. I know we haven't been in touch since we were kids, but I am hoping that you would be open to have a chat with me. I'm just remembering some things from my childhood involving Cameron's father. I left my mobile number and waited for his response. Wilson responded the same day, saying, "Oh my God, I saw this story too, and I'm really glad that you reached out. I've been feeling so sick about all of this, and this has opened up a lot for me too." Wilson said that he would call that night, and when he called, we ended up speaking for 2.5 hours. His memory was stronger than mine, but that's probably because the poor guy had more to remember. He said that he was abused many times by Cameron's father during those same years. The sequence of events was almost identical to my memories. On the first nights when we slept over, Cameron's father started entering the room when the boys were changing before bed. He then started entering the bathroom whilst he was showering, and he eventually entered the shower, which is when the abuse started. He said that Cameron would often be there when it happened, but had no memory of me being there. And this went on for a couple of years and ended in the first year of high school when he turned 13. And it was around this age that he actually started to become aware that what his father had done was wrong, and only then he felt comfortable about it. He stopped talking to Cameron around that time, and they fell out of touch. Wilson never reported it or told anyone, however, entered into therapy for some time when he was an adult as he tried to process what he had experienced. I still don't know if I remember that day in the shower accurately, however, if Cameron's mom had unexpectedly arrived home, that probably saved me from suffering the same abuse. I had no idea how close I came to experiencing things that could have completely turned my life around. It shocks me to remember my innocent child's mind having no awareness that anything was wrong, and it would have been so easy to have taken advantage of that naivety. I'm still wondering if I had suppressed anything more that might have happened, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, so I will book into therapy to try and work through it. I have changed names in this story as Wilson still hasn't told anyone, and I don't want anyone reading to sort of piece this together, but the entire experience has shaken me so much. I'm glad that there is more awareness about abuse and people are more open with their children, but please educate and protect your kids. I only know how easy it is for predators and groomers to take advantage of children. I was always an extremely small and sickly child. I looked young for my age. My family and I lived out of town about 8 miles. Our little community was next to a highway. The school bus would drop me off 2 blocks away from home, and one day I noticed a red truck following slowly behind me. So slow that I figured that they were just looking for a house or something. I ignored it and walked to my house, and that was the end of that. Consistently, though, this truck would follow slowly behind me, and after a couple of days of this, I walked into my house. I was always the first one home and looked out the window. Inside was an older man in a black lab. He was staring at me, idling inside of his truck, and then would pull away. I decided enough was enough, so I told my parents. Of course, my sister was quick to jump in that I was lying. I had a habit of telling stories, but my mom thankfully believed me. She drove me to the bus stop the next morning. The red truck was there, across the street at the gas station, pointing toward the bus. I got on the bus and my mom decided to drive around the truck, and she described the scene. The man was disheveled and dirty, hunched over in his seat just staring at the bus. His license plates were caked in mud, so she couldn't make them out. It freaked her out so much that she called the police and the school. I went to school and was quickly pulled into the office, and the man had been spotted at the school's property, sitting, idling in his truck. That day I rode the bus home. and this time, the truck was parked alongside the street. I would have to walk past this man's driver's side door to get home, and I debated, considering running for it. Apparently, this man was getting desperate now that he was spotted. A police car showed up, and I talked to that policeman. They went to go talk to the man, and he quickly pulled away from the curb and took off down the highway. And I never saw him again after that. But I don't believe that he was ever caught for anything illegal. But because of this experience, I'm extremely guarded and paranoid with my own daughter and her soon-to-be sibling. The world is a terrifying place these days, and children go missing so easily. I don't like to think about if I had been grabbed, and I wouldn't be here typing this. My kids wouldn't exist, and I was fortunate, but many children in my area were not. Friends went to Mexico for a vacation and asked me to house sit and take care of their dogs while they were gone. They pay me $40 a day to just sit around and let the dogs out when they need to go. I am disabled, so that kind of helps a lot. This was on a semi-rural area, and houses are roughly a quarter-mile apart. Police have to come from town 15 miles away, and response time can be well over an hour, and I always take my pistol with me. It's always been quiet when I've stayed there, and this time was different though. I was in the shower when the dog started barking and growling. They are big, large German shepherds, and one is actually police trained. The owners loan him to the county as a drug dog, and if you tell them to be quiet, they obey. This time they didn't, so I was on high alert. I shut off the water and looked out the window. I didn't see anything, but when I walked out of the bathroom, I saw a shadow go across the bedroom window. They have lights around the house that stay on all night. I whispered to the dogs to hush, and they did. And that's when I heard a man's voice. I couldn't make out everything that he was saying, but I distinctly heard two words. "Come around." So I am sure that there was more than one person. I ran into the living room with my pistol and saw that the door handle was turning. I yelled that I have a gun and that I'll use it, and I heard feet begin to run away. I was telling Siri to dial 911 and got the county sheriff fast. She said that there were two cars on another call not far away, but it would take about 20 minutes for them to get there. And that's better than the usual hour, I suppose, but I was pretty shaken. I explained that I was on a farm and would have to go down to the road and unlock a cattle gate to let them in, and to please tell the officers that I would be carrying a pistol, and please don't shoot me by mistake because I'm not going outside the house without it. The dispatcher said, "Oh no, do not go out there without your gun. I'll tell them." The one good thing about living in a red state, I suppose, and she asked if I could see the road, and I can, so she said to wait in the house until I saw blue lights. I hung up and called my friends in Mexico. Their camera footage can be downloaded via app, and they said that they would go through it while I waited for the cops. I locked the house and went down to the gate when the police arrived. They searched the whole place, including the barn, but didn't find anyone. And while they were looking, my friends texted me the camera footage. There was a man on the porch. Unfortunately, the cameras were not angled to get a shot of his face, and it, of course, was dark out. And I still think that there was more than one creep because of what he said, the come around part. The police were very nice and said that they had passed a man on a bike on the way, which is strange for this area, especially at night, and went to look for him, but that's all that they could do. They took a full report, but never caught the creep. My husband came and stayed with me the rest of their trip. One of their neighbors said that he found a tent and some gear in the woods a few weeks before, so somebody was living back there, maybe a homeless person from town. I have house sat again since then, and it was quiet. They're going away for Christmas, and I'll be there again. A lot of people ask me if I would have shot the creep had he broken in. Yeah, absolutely. I would be sorry that I had hurt somebody, but if it's them or me, well, you know the rest. So at around 12-ish a.m., after I had gotten off of work, My boyfriend and I were watching TV and had just put out a blunt when there's a knock at the door. We both look at each other in confusion when a second round of knocks goes off. He gets up off the couch, looks out the peephole, and recognizes it's a woman who talked his head off when he was checking out these apartments before moving in. She's as he describes, probably in her 50s and very annoying. He sees her every morning when he's going to work, and she always waits for him to leave first before driving off, and he reluctantly opens the door as I take the paraphernalia out of sight. I can hear her voice, but she's speaking incoherently until he apparently deciphers heat and not working, to which he says, "Your heat's not working?" She says yes and asks him to look at it when our cat walks out the door, so he closes it to pick her up. The lady begins walking upstairs, so he brings the cat back in and follows. He sees the woman standing there as he reaches the top of the steps, and from her doorway she says, "Never mind, it's working." Meanwhile, all the lights in her apartment were off, pitch black. She then says, "You can still come in and take a look if you want." And he says no way and decides not to wait around for anything else weird to happen, so he turns around and descends down the steps, returning to our apartment, where he sat in silence for 5 minutes trying to piece together what just happened before regaling me with the story I just told you. Fast forward to about 1:30 to 2 a.m. My boyfriend is asleep now when I hear steps coming down the stairs and then, you guessed it, knocking, but very faint this time. I know it's not on my door, so I look out the eye hole and there she is again, knocking on my neighbor's door, yelling more incoherent words for a solid 5 minutes. Eventually, she just walks away with no answer, but not in the direction of the stairs to her apartment. I hear her walk back upstairs maybe an hour later. Strange. Fast forward to now, she's knocking on our door at 3 a.m., to which of course she gets no answer, but I'm also looking out of the peephole, and I can see her mumbling to herself as she knocks. She walks away like before, the opposite way of the stairs, and I didn't hear her go back upstairs until 10 minutes ago as she stomped her way up there, obviously very mad. Just a very odd experience I wish I didn't have in the middle of the night while stoned. I'm going to guess early dementia or maybe even substance abuse. Now update as this happened Friday night. My boyfriend went to his car to go to work Monday morning and noticed a nail driven into the side of his tire. I'm not saying it was her who did this out of rage due to her unanswered knocks, but it was very convenient as he didn't drive all weekend, so there's no telling when it happened. He did, however, call our complex about the knocking and yelling at all hours of the night. Update 2. It's Thursday now, 1:46 a.m., almost a week later. Remember how I said my boyfriend normally sees her every morning on his way to work? He hasn't seen her once this entire week. Her car sat in the same spot as well. And also we haven't seen a single light from her apartment, not when he gets home at 8 p.m., nor when I get home at 11 p.m. I'm gonna see if I'm able to call in a wellness check on her in the morning because I have a feeling something isn't right, and I'll continue updating if anything comes about. I'm a military brat. My second tour coming to Japan, so I think that I don't really have to worry about my safety. Never had problems here during the first tour. I was 13 at the time, no one is home, and I decided to go to the convenience store right around the corner. I do my shopping and notice a guy at the end of the aisle glancing over at me, but over and over. He had baggy, worn-down black clothes, very pale, long hair, looked like he hadn't slept for days, and was super skinny. I quickly look away and just go to the next aisle, and he does the same, but not even in a subtle way. It was like we were playing some type of tag or something, because he was jerking and darting to whatever aisle I had rushed to. Stupidly, I just hurry and pay for my stuff and leave, and I thought that he didn't follow me because my head is turned to make sure that he doesn't come out of the store, too. I relax after I turn the corner. Literally just minutes before I'm able to get to my house, I hear footsteps behind me, and I freaking lock eyes hard with the guy. He's all wide-eyed, and it just scared the life out of me, so My dumb idiot self proceeds to just speed walk to my house. He did the same. As I close my door, I see him speed walk past, still wide-eyed, staring into my face, scared for the rest of that month since he knew where I lived. I'm 18 now and I still am in Japan, different house, and luckily, I never saw that weirdo again. Last year I was on vacation in southern Europe with a large group of friends. We had been there a while and always took an Uber from our rented house to the city, which had very nice bars and clubs. The thing with Uber is it allows very cheap and flexible transport, but it also opened up the door to a lot of creeps. I've had Uber drivers who were super cool, but also extremely drugged up road ragers who drive like maniacs and think they're impressive. And it's always the worst once an attractive woman sits in the car. It feels like a lot of total creeps think, now that I have her here in this situation where she can't flee, she is forced to talk and be nice to me. And for that very reason, the guys of our group always use their phone to call the Uber so no creep picks the ride specifically because a female name popped up. And some of my friends even use male fake names because of that. But the guy we had that day was by far the worst. It's a late evening. An Uber picks us up and drives me, a 27-year-old male, another 27-year-old male, a 25-year-old female, and a 24-year-old female to the desired old town where we plan to go clubbing and drinking. While driving, the driver constantly looks at the two women in the back seat via the mirror. They only told me this afterwards. He kept starting conversations, but basically only addressed the girls who left answering to the guys, who gave short, non-detailed answers, essentially signaling that we, 1, don't want to talk, and 2, don't think he needs to know our plans. To us, he seemed way too pushy and he wasn't really big on hygiene, giving off the classic, this is exactly the scenario why we don't like booking Ubers vibe. Meanwhile, we wouldn't wait to arrive at our destination and get out of this uncomfortable but not super horrible situation. But that situation did not feel great when this guy didn't stop on the road, but instead pulled into a parking spot. He started fumbling with his phone and we're just like, alright, weird, but let's get out, and left the car. To our surprise, the guy then turned the car off and got out as well. We saw that red flag and just started to walk away towards the bar area of the town without saying a word. Cars can't enter the old town. After 40 feet, once we reached the gates, we stopped because this was the meeting spot for the other half of our group, who took a separate Uber, and we found out that this guy was following us and stopped as well. You know the classic circle people form when talking, where one guy is just standing next to it because people don't let him in? Well, we did that with him. We started making conversations about how long the others will take to get there, where they are right now, etc., and this guy keeps throwing in comments like he's part of the posse. Oh cool, even more people. This must be a great evening. And this was in really broken English too. And then we texted our friends in a group chat that we are changing the meeting place to this bar because the Uber driver is following us around and we want to lose him. So, one of us started leading the group at a quick pace through the streets. They are very small, lots of people, high old town buildings all around them. We made turns at every corner trying to lose this guy, but he still followed us. Finally, we reached this big plaza where there were hundreds of people closely together, basically queuing to enter the narrow street up ahead. We pushed through like rude douchebags and successfully lost the guy. Finally, we could head straight to the bar after our detour and linked up with the other part of our group. 2 hours passed, life was all good, and we decided to head to another bar a bit further away because the drinks and prices kinda sucked in this one. We had 2 drinks at that bar, and guess who walks in through the door and stands next to the table? That guy. And he says, "Hey guys." At this point, a friend, a 28-year-old male who was good at communicating and frankly quite big, tells the guy that we want to keep to ourselves and have no interest in hanging out with him. Please leave us alone, man. Fortunately, the guy says no problem and leaves. Unfortunately, at 3 a.m., while dancing in the crowd at a club, the same guy announced his presence by tenderly pressing his body against the back of one of the girls, whom he had been staring at through the mirror in the car. The girl's boyfriend recognizes the guy, gets angry as heck, grabs him by the collar, and essentially tells him that if he keeps following us, he'll get the life kicked out of him. A bouncer sees this and approaches them. I start talking to the bouncer, who was super annoyed by anyone intervening at first, but after hearing how this guy stalked us from his car to this club, he just asks the Uber guy a few questions and then proceeds to just throw him out. We stayed a bit longer than we wanted, in hopes of him not waiting for us, and after that, we reported the guy for being a creep in the app and called another Uber, which thankfully was not him. It happened last night at around 7:30 p.m., so it was already dark outside. My friend and I, both 22-year-old females, were about 2/3 of the way through our 16-hour drive back home from Salem, Massachusetts. I really needed to pee, so we stopped at a rest area in eastern Pennsylvania. I usually avoid rest areas, but it looked nice enough and I didn't have any bad feelings about it. We walked in, and the only other person inside was an older man, probably mid to late 60s, standing by the vending machines talking on his phone. We went past him across the room and into the bathroom. We were in there for a good 10 to 15 minutes because she wanted to pop a couple pimples. When we were finished, we walked back out laughing about something one of us had said. The man was still standing there, but he wasn't on the phone anymore. He stared and smiled at us, in what we both thought was a creepy way, the entire time it took us to get to the door to exit the rest area. We started running back to my car, which was about 6 parking spaces from the door, still laughing but also a little freaked out. We were about to get in the car when I remembered my boyfriend wanted us to check the oil on the way home since it was such a long drive and my car had been having some slight issues. I considered waiting until the next time that we needed to stop for gas, but decided to just get it over with. As I was checking the oil, the man from before, along with another slightly younger man we hadn't seen, left the rest area. They both started walking towards us, with the younger one coming head-on the sidewalk and the older one kind of going diagonally toward the driver's side of the car. This is odd because there were no other cars past mine. The only cars that I could see were on the other side of the lot closer to the building. My friend and I looked at each other and bolted for the car doors. But then I realized that I was still holding the dipstick, so I cursed and we had to run back over and lift the hood back up. Then we hurried into the car and locked the doors just as they were approaching. We watched as the younger man walked slowly past the car, staring in at us with a blank face. He continued walking down the sidewalk for a while before pausing for a second and turning around to come back toward us. The older man, still just sort of smiling, got within a few feet of the driver's side door, then turned and walked past us to the other side of the parking lot. I backed out, and once I straightened the car and started pulling forward to leave the rest area, we saw that he had moved to the middle of the road and was standing there with that same unnerving smile, but now he was motioning for us to stop. I drove past him because, no way. We watched in the mirrors as both men got into cars on the other side of the parking lot closer to the building, and we spent the next couple of hours shaken up and blabbing about what could have happened. I'm not sure what their intentions were, but there can't be any good reason to approach 2 women like that at a rest area. I tried telling myself that maybe they were going to ask if I needed help with our car troubles, but I was very clearly just checking the oil, and it doesn't make sense why the younger man would walk the complete opposite direction from his car and go so far down the sidewalk. I'm not really sure. "5 years ago, my friend and I, an 18-year-old male, decided to drive up to Montreal. We ended up staying in an Airbnb in an affluent Jewish neighborhood outside the city. On the first night, we headed to our local train station to get to downtown Montreal and decided to get drunk and look for weed there. We met a nice fellow who sold us some, but then realized 5 minutes later that the weed mysteriously disappeared, so we went back to the guy and asked if we could buy some more. He introduced us to his friends, and we asked how much for another 3 grams. His friends said $17, which we thought was reasonable. He even gave us a brand new Samsung Galaxy as collateral for whatever reason, and when we handed him a 20, however, he took it and explained that he had said $70. We were confused and said, "That's way too expensive, no thanks." But then we went to take the 20 back from him, and he started backing up and said, "What are you going to do?" And we were outnumbered, as there were 4 or 5 of them and only 2 of us. With drunken confidence on our side, my friend grabbed his arm and I yanked the 20 out of his hand. I chirped him out, explaining that I have a beer bottle in my hand and that he could get his butt kicked playing games like that with people. And this long-haired Asian guy from the crew came up behind me and slapped the beer bottle out of my hand, saying something like, "This is Montreal." We decided not to continue the altercation any further and started walking away while exchanging insults. After walking a few hundred feet away from these thugs, I remembered the phone they handed me and pulled it out. It was fully functional, and me and my friends decided to smash it on the sidewalk. About 30 seconds after doing this, we looked back and see the whole gang running full sprint towards us. It was almost as if the guy had just remembered that he'd given us his phone before trying to mess with us. We immediately started running and ducked into the shadows of someone's yard, waiting for an Uber to get to us. The next day, we dropped acid on the train and headed back into the city. When we arrived out of the station, it looked like we arrived onto a post-apocalyptic wasteland full of tweakers. Drugged-out maniacs were screaming in the faces of passerbys as they walked by, casually stepping to the side and going about their day. Phone booths were smashed out, with groups of vagabonds contorting demonically. This was a terrifying scene to stumble onto while tripping, until walking a few blocks away and entering beautiful downtown Montreal. They were hosting Olympic time trials for cycling at the time, which was really cool to see. At one point, I looked into the glass windows of a McDonald's where, directly in front of me, I locked eyes with an old lady with a Hello Kitty purse smoking a crack pipe at one of the tables. After a 10-hour balls-to-the-wall trip, it was nighttime and we decided to head back to our Airbnb. When we arrived to the train station from the night before, we decided to stop into a McDonald's and grab a burger before Ubering home. While we were waiting for our order, my friend noticed the same crew that we encountered walking in and out of the bathroom of the McDonald's looking at us, and several more figures waiting outside. It was clear that they were planning on jumping us and stealing all our stuff. One of the guys came over to us and tapped us on the shoulder, signaling us to come outside. As I saw it, we had 2 options: either call the police and wait inside, or make a run for it. We couldn't afford to have our things stolen, as we needed our IDs to get back over the border. We made a run for it, sprinting out of the other exit of the McDonald's and hauling it for dear life. My friend tripped and rolled his ankle, causing him immense agony, but we had to keep running to a nearby parking lot to get cover, and once we made it, we hid out in another restaurant until our Uber came and narrowly avoided an intense 7-person beating while still tripping. Still to this day, I have no idea why this guy randomly decided to hand us a cell phone for collateral 30 seconds before trying to rip us off. It's also as if though he was too stupid to think the plan out fully. I also have no idea why they were stupid enough to leave the other exit of the McDonald's completely open for us to escape, and if it weren't for that, we most definitely would have had the living crap beaten out of us and been robbed. I work at a hotel. A middle-aged man has been staying there for weeks, and at least a few days a week I find him at the elevator, but it's around the same time every day, and I started finding it strange. He always tries to chat, but his charisma is just off. It feels forced and awkward, and alongside this, his eyes are abnormally large and kind of reminding me of Elizabeth Holmes. If not the elevator, I find myself interacting with him when he finds me cleaning the rooms. Once I was going to the grocery store and he was heading in the same direction, except he crossed the street without looking or waiting, forcing the cars to wait for him. So far, every encounter I have with him I found just really strange, but we'll go on. and I suspect that he's abusing drugs, but it's not my business or place. Until conveniently when the hallway was empty and I was the only worker, this is the day that he chose to buy me food from one of the restaurants nearby. He tells me that I work hard and deserve to eat, but the food was unwrapped and he was already eating some of it. I tell him no, and he insists again and again until I tell him that I already ate and was full. And then finally he gives up and walks away, and I didn't see him the rest of my shift. I don't know what to think of any of this besides some major red flags. I'm not sure how old I was, but probably something around 10. Me and my family were out visiting our grandparents in California. My mama has always loved gathering sticks and stones and whatever else she could find to make beautiful crafts. She knew of a beach that wasn't often visited and had lots of driftwood. Me and 2 sisters, aunt, and dad all went together. We pulled into the parking lot and it was completely empty, and we thought that we were lucky to get the beach to ourselves. I'd like to mention here that while my mama does drive a truck, you can very easily tell it's driven by a woman with various stickers and decorations. I think we spent around an hour gathering sticks and stones, and we honestly had a really great time. We were walking back up the path to the parking lot, us girls all in the front and my dad in the back. As we got back, there was this car parked right next to us. The entire parking lot was still empty. There was a man standing a ways away and started to walk towards us. My father quickly picked up what was happening and immediately made his way to the front of us. The man quickly grabbed his phone and pretended to get a call. He walked across the parking lot in the other direction as if though he was having a conversation. My dad made sure to make it very known to this man that we were on to him. He walked all around his car, scoping it out. It had lots of inappropriate stickers, and I can't remember what they were, but they did make me very uncomfortable, and the windows were also tinted. After my dad searched around making sure nobody else was around, he hurried us into the truck and drove around making sure that we wouldn't be followed until we drove back to our grandparents. For a bit of context, I work at a gas station in the backwoods of Tennessee, and that's where this happened. Last night when I clocked in at 8, the store was completely dead. I figured it was going to be a pretty easy night because the road this station is on is not the main road. Actually, it used to be up until about a decade ago when a new freeway was built. This led basically every business that was here to pack up and leave their old building abandoned. Thanks to this, there are a lot of abandoned buildings on this stretch of road that local druggies sort of tend to claim as their own. Anyway, at around 11, I only had about an hour left on my shift, and so I figured that I should actually get some work done instead of just sitting around and doing nothing. I'm 18, so I work the shift alone, which is nice because it means I can do pretty much whatever I want. This is normally pretty great because I can do whatever I want so long as I get what I need to get done finished. I noticed that we were almost out of barbecue chips, so I'd need to go get them from our storage space, which was for some reason in the basement of the station. I've always hated going down there just because it gives me the creeps. Why the owner decided to store everything down there is beyond my comprehension. I got about halfway down the steps before something fell on the other side of the room, and it sounded like footsteps were coming my way. I sprinted up the stairs and locked the doors to the basement, panicking like a madman the entire time. When I got back upstairs, I went behind the counter to the store computers so I could check the security cameras. I flicked over to the one that looked into the basement, and there was this guy, just standing there, smiling up into the camera. He had a look of absolute insanity in his eyes, but he didn't look like the average junkie in the area. He was clean-shaven and dressed in what looked to be jeans and a button-up of some kind. Honestly, if he'd walked into the store, I wouldn't have batted an eye, but because he was down there, and because he was just looking into the camera, it shook me to my core. I called the store owner at first, and he was pretty mad that I had called him in the middle of the night, but once he had heard how freaked out I was, his tone quickly changed. He told me that he'd be there in 15 minutes and just lock the main door to the store and make sure that the man didn't go anywhere. I asked if I should call the police, but for some reason he didn't want me to do that just yet. I locked up the entrance to the gas station and went back to looking at the man. He was still just staring at the camera. About 3 or so minutes of him staring at me later, and he walked out of view of the camera. My boss showed up soon after, armed with a shotgun, and when I let him in, immediately he went to the basement. I went with him just because I felt safe with there being another person there, and all we found was nothing. My boss ultimately chalked this up to me being tired and hallucinating that the man existed, but I know what I saw. And this had me scared beyond comprehension, as I had to clock back into work in a few hours, and I'm really dreading it. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. I release new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and there are super fun live streams every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday night. I'd love to see you there. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/Let'sReadOfficial, and you might even hear your story featured on the next video. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations and bonus content over on Patreon, or click that big join button to hear about the extra perks offered for the channel. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all of these stories in big compilations and save huge on data, located anywhere you listen to podcasts. All links in the description below. Thanks so much, friends. And remember, Daddy's home.